Orchestrated original memoir narrative with fresh character names and emotional family arc. Orchestrated original memoir narrative with fresh character names and emotional family arc. The morning my daughter slid a brochure for Brookdale Senior Living across my kitchen table. I had just finished pouring her coffee the way she liked it. 2 sugars and a splash of half and half. The same way I'd poured it since she was 16, and started drinking it to stay up studying. I set the mug down in front of her, and there it was. That glossy folded paper with a silver-haired woman laughing on the cover like somebody had just told her the funniest thing in the world. "It's just an option, Mom," Heather said, not even looking up. "Doug and I were talking. The house is too much for you." I remember the steam coming off her coffee. I remember the kitchen clock ticking, the one Walter bought me at a flea market in 1987, that runs 4 minutes fast and always has. I remember thinking very clearly that I was 71 years old, and I had never once felt that this house was too much for me until my own child told me it was. I'm going to tell you the whole thing, start to finish, because I've spent the better part of a year now turning it over in my mind, and I've decided that the only way to set it down is to set it down honest. Even the parts that don't flatter me. Walter and I bought that house in 1979. It's a 3-bedroom colonial on a quarter acre in a little town outside Columbus, the kind of place with a maple in the front yard that turns the color of a fire engine every October. We paid $62,000 for it, which felt like a fortune at the time, and we were so house poor that first year we ate spaghetti 4 nights a week, and Walter patched the roof himself rather than pay a man to do it. He fell off the ladder once and cracked 2 ribs, and still got back up there the next weekend with his side all taped up, swearing at the shingles. That's the kind of man he was. Stubborn as a fence post and twice as reliable. He passed in 2019, heart in his sleep beside me, and I didn't even know until morning. I won't dwell on that part. I'll only say that for 40 years I had shared that house with another living soul. And then one Tuesday in March I did not, and the silence of that house became the loudest thing in my life. But I managed. People always assume a widow falls apart, and I'm here to tell you some of us don't. I kept the garden. I kept up with the neighbors. I joined a Tuesday quilting circle at the Methodist church, even though I'm not much for church, because the women there were warm and they didn't treat me like I was made of glass. I had my pension from 31 years teaching 4th grade, and I had Walter's life insurance, and the house was paid off in full. I was, by any reasonable measure, doing just fine. So when Heather started in about the house being too much, I knew it wasn't really about the house. Let me tell you about my daughter, and I'll try to be fair, because she is my child, and I love her even now, even after everything. Heather was always the kind of girl who wanted more than what was in front of her, and there's nothing wrong with that. She married Doug 15 years ago, a man who sells commercial real estate and talks about money the way some men talk about football, constantly and with a lot of confidence, and not always with a lot of accuracy. They have 2 kids, my grandchildren, Chloe, who's 19 now, and Tyler, who's 16, and I would lie down in traffic for either one of them. The trouble, as best I can piece it together, started about a year before the brochure. Doug had put money into some development deal out near the highway, strip mall, something, and it had gone sideways. I didn't know the details then. I only knew that the family Christmas that year had a tightness to it, a kind of held breath, and that Doug drank more than usual. And Heather laughed too hard at things that weren't funny. I should have asked. That's one of the things I've had to make peace with. I saw my daughter struggling and I told myself it wasn't my business, and I let her carry it alone, and maybe if I'd asked things would have gone different. But you don't get the do-over. That's the cruel arithmetic of getting old. You collect all this wisdom about what you should have done, and you collect it precisely one day too late to use it. After the brochure morning, the campaign began in earnest. That's the word for it, a campaign. It was never a single conversation. It was 100 small ones, each one so reasonable on its own that to object made me feel like a difficult old woman. "Mom, you really shouldn't be going up and down those stairs." "Mom, what if you fell and nobody knew for days?" "Mom, the property taxes on this place are just burning money away. You could be liquid." That was Doug, of course. Liquid, as is my home of 40 years, or nothing but a clogged drain in need of a plumber. And here's the thing that I'm ashamed to admit. It worked. Slowly, drip by drip, it worked. They were a groove in my confidence. I started noticing the stairs in a way I never had. I started thinking, when I came down them in the morning, that maybe I was holding the rail a little tighter than I used to. I started lying awake at 2 in the morning, imagining myself at the bottom of those stairs with a broken hip and the phone 6 feet out of reach. They had put that picture in my head, and once it's in there, you can't get it out. By that summer, I had agreed to just look at a couple of places. Heather drove me. The first was a continuing care community out by the mall, and I'll grant you it was nice. Clean. They had a saltwater pool and a movie night, and a woman at the front desk who called everyone sweetheart in a way that made my teeth itch. The second place was newer, more expensive, and the studio apartment they showed me was smaller than my current living room. I stood in the middle of it and tried to imagine 40 years of a life folded down into that one beige box, and something in my chest closed up like a fist. "It's cozy," Heather said. "It's a closet," I said. But here's where I have to tell you the part I didn't understand yet, the part that didn't come clear until much later. Because while I was standing in that beige box feeling claustrophobic, Heather was talking quietly with the sales manager near the door, and I caught a few words: move-in incentive, refundable entrance fee, and something about the proceeds. I didn't think anything of it then. I was too busy being heartsick. It was my friend Eleanor who first said the thing out loud. Eleanor lives 2 doors down, and we've been close since our kids were small. She's a year older than me, sharp as a tack, used to be a paralegal before she retired, and she does not suffer fools, including me when I'm being one. We were sitting on her back porch with iced tea, and I was telling her about the second place, the closet, and how Heather kept saying it was cozy, and Eleanor set down her glass and looked at me over her reading glasses. "Margaret," she said, "who gets the money from the house?" "What do you mean? I'd get it. It's my house." "And where would it go? After you go liquid, as that son-in-law of yours likes to say. Where does it sit?" I didn't have an answer, and the not having an answer was the beginning of me waking up. See, what I hadn't put together was this. A few months earlier, Heather had taken me to the bank. She'd been so sweet about it, so concerned. She said that with everything that could happen at my age, it would be smart to have her name on my accounts, just in case, just so somebody could pay my bills if I got sick or had a stroke and couldn't sign things. Power of attorney, she called it. She had the papers all ready, printed out, little yellow flags marking where I should sign. The bank officer was a nice young man, and he asked me twice if I understood what I was signing, and I said yes, of course, because my daughter was sitting right there, and she would never steer me wrong. I signed where the yellow flags were. I didn't read it. I want you to hear me say that, because I've heard a lot of people, when they hear stories like mine, get a certain the thing I keep coming back to, sitting on my porch with the purple bulbs nodding in the spring wind, is how quietly the trouble walked in. It didn't kick the door down. It poured my own coffee. And I think that's the part worth holding on to. Because the danger in my life never looked like danger. It looked like Heather worrying about my stairs. It looked like Doug saying the word liquid. It looked like love, and that's exactly why it nearly worked. Everything that happened, happened for a reason, and the reasons stacked up one on top of the other like bricks. Dud made a bad bet he was too proud to admit. Heather was too ashamed to come to me honest. So she told herself a story where using me was protecting me. And I, God help me, signed papers I didn't read because I couldn't imagine my own child meaning me harm. Every one of those choices led straight to that kitchen floor where I sat and cried. 'Cause in effect, plain as arithmetic. You don't escape it. You only get to decide what you add to the pile next. What saved me wasn't luck. It was 3 things I had to dig up out of myself, and I want to name them plain. The first was simply doing the right thing even when the easy thing was to give up and hand over the money for peace. I almost chose the easy thing. I'm not too proud to tell you that. The second was using my head instead of my heart for once, reading the documents, calling a real lawyer, asking the cold question Eleanor asked me about, where the money would actually go. Love had blinded me. Clear thinking is what let me see again. And the third was the plain backbone to get up off that floor, wash my face, and refuse to lie down for it, even knowing it might cost me my daughter for a while. It did cost me 4 hard months of it. But a thing worth keeping is usually worth standing up for. So if you take anything from an old woman tonight, take this. Be good, but don't let your goodness make you a fool. Think hard about the papers people slide across your table, especially the people you love most. Because love is not the same as trust, and it never was. And when the standing up time comes, and it will come, find the spine to stand, even if your hands are shaking on the wheel like mine were in that diner parking lot. I kept my house. I kept my name on my own life. And I learned too late to be graceful about it. But not too late to matter. That the bravest thing a person can do is stay exactly where they belong and refuse to be talked out of it.